Here is a truth that is being revealed in a post-Trump presidency world, and that is that Trump was merely a proxy for a spirit that in some ways increasingly defines the spirit of the age, but runs counter to the spirit of the age, or the zeitgeist, as Germans would call it. It runs counter to the zeitgeist that is being promoted by official sources. So Trump's entire appeal, whatever his merits or demerits as a candidate or as a person, his fundamental appeal was that he served as, I don't want to say a spokesman, but in a way as a spokesman or as a representative of this anti-zeitgeist. And this anti-zeitgeist isn't going away. It hasn't gone anywhere. Trump's defeat hasn't resulted in the defeat of this anti-zeitgeist. Instead, the battle wages on. Now, I wanted to talk about what I think are some of the ramifications of this state of things, because what it seems like we have happening now, and I can't help but pay attention to it. I can't help but notice it, even though my determination is to get off the grid, that nothing good comes from being on the grid right now. So I am at cross purposes with all of this. But I can't help but noticing, just because I've in some way positioned myself as being, and I am definitely a part of this anti-zeitgeist in my own way. But what I've noticed is that now representatives of the official zeitgeist, such as the corporate media, and other mainstream, well-funded venues in, wherever such places, such venues can be found, whether they're in the media or in Hollywood, Silicon Valley, the banking system. You know what I'm talking about. These representatives of these systems, it seems like it's becoming more normalized. It's becoming more just standard issue. That now the deal is that they're playing whack-a-mole. They're playing whack-a-mole with manifestations of this anti-zeitgeist wherever it springs up, wherever they recognize it for what it is. They if they were I only have one hand free, but they cross themselves. Of course, they're antichrist themselves, but in a sense, they see this as something to be dispelled, something to be exorcised, and they're just waiting for it to pop up in one place or another. The latest place seemingly being the Wall Street bets phenomenon, and it seems that is going to be standard issue. It's like a what do I call it? Like a low vibrational war. It's like a war taking place on a certain level that doesn't admit itself as being a war, but it is a war. It is a war of attempted extermination. But that war of attempted extermination will not prevail, because the anti-zeitgeist is too numerous. And it can't be wiped out. You can't wipe it out. You can't wipe out half of the country. You just can't. It's not feasible for them to do that. Nevertheless, this this fanaticism has taken over. If cooler heads were to prevail, then some kind of truce would be arranged. Someone would realize, okay, we can't wipe these people out, much as we might like to. They're still going to keep popping up and giving us trouble, and we hate them and we hate everything that they stand for. Nevertheless, we must acknowledge that they exist. We must acknowledge that they will continue to exist, and we've got to find a way to share this world with them, because we're not helping ourselves if all we ever do is curse their existence and attempt to play whack-a-mole wherever they pop up again, whether it's with a seemingly dissident candidate for president, or with messing with the financial system, in some upstart way that we absolutely forbid, because it messes with our funding and our friends and the people who help to keep the status quo that we are attempting to enforce, or whether it pops up somewhere else, which it surely will, and it surely has. I mean, I saw what happened with the so-called alt-right. I was a part of it. And then I saw it transform, or be transformed, or be reconstrued, in part by those who were a part of it, and in part by those who wanted to wipe it out, wanted to exterminate it, wanted to render it as something that was only worthy of being punched, kicked, and shot. The Antifa method. So one hopes that eventually cooler heads will prevail on some level, but in order for cooler heads to prevail, the fanaticism has to die down. And the fanaticism is not dying down. The fanaticism is being kept at a high boil. The hatred that is being encouraged, that is being fomented, is unrelenting. Nothing seems to get in its way. And everything that you think would be unifying, just like with 9/11, they said, oh, well, that brought us together. For a few months, we were one nation. Well, this so-called pandemic, I refuse to call it that, but I will call it a pandemic if I put my own disclaimer before it, if I put it in quotation marks. That has not brought us together, right? Not in the least. Because some of us are aware that it is something that is being imposed from the top down, not the disease itself, or whatever the heck it might be, if it's anything. If there's any actual new novel virus, supposedly, if that is anything in keeping with reality, when it's something that it's openly admitted has never been isolated, and it's openly admitted that there's no test for it. The so-called test for it is not a test for it at all. So how do we know that this thing even exists? But in any case, putting all of that aside, the manner in which this so-called crisis has been dealt with in a top-down manner by those with power and control has done nothing but create greater fault lines, greater tensions, greater hatreds. The degree of hatred that is being fomented against people who don't wear masks, who don't want to get a vaccine, who question what they're told by the corporate media, is unrelenting. Now, that's not to say that everybody falls for it, because, again, I don't wear a mask most of the time, and when I walk around without my mask on and I see a bunch of people wearing masks, I don't sense hostility from them. Most of them aren't particularly ideologized, I haven't experienced that many COVID Karens myself. Maybe it's due to the part of the world or the part of the country that I live in. I'm not sure. But in any case, I do know that the effort is being made just to exacerbate, to make everything worse. It's just when you have this entity, the corporate media, the corporate press, and you're aware. I remember back in 2015, 2016, the first round of the Black Lives Matter riots and everything, and all these stories about which led with policeman shoots unarmed black man, a white policeman shoots unarmed black man. These were in news stories that they led with that, right? It was at the time I just thought this was so highly irresponsible, and it was whipping up such vitriol intentionally, it would seem, and it was so irresponsible in the sense that even in the cases where it was true, yes, this is a white policeman, why we should talk about the policeman's race, why that should be in the headline or the lead of the story, that in itself seems irresponsible. Shoots unarmed black man. Again, that gives this impression of something, of this of something happening, whereby an unarmed black man is just walking around minding his own business, and then a white cop pulls up and shoots him. That's not anything like what actually happened. And I say that not as somebody who is particularly a supporter of the police. I was just aware of how the way that these stories were being promoted was deeply irresponsible. And the same thing applies. I mean, I've seen nothing change in the corporate media. It goes through phases. They cover this issue, they cover that issue. Not because this is happening and then something else is happening, but because they choose to make something topical, and then they choose to make something else topical. what the news is what they're directed to make the news into. And everything is freighted with weaponized language. I mean, it's just, you can't find, for the life of you can't find coverage of any of these issues, any of these stories, in which journalistic objectivity is honestly practiced. Or if you find something like that, it's not something that you're going to see in the mainstream. And that's where the mainstream should be where moderate, you would think, where you would find moderate or objective or non-screeds, not where you wouldn't find supposed news articles which are really barely disguised political screeds promoting hatred of one group or another. But that's seemingly all you find in the mainstream. And so, anyway, how should I want to bring this back to what I was saying at the very beginning. What we have now is, again, maybe people thought it would end with Trump being defeated. I mean, he was defeated in that he ceased to be president. But not in the sense that he necessarily lost the election, but that the powers that be promoted election results which were held up in the institutions of the courts and so forth, and it led to him not being president anymore. But it was maybe thought, if once he's gone, now we can have we can get back our rationality. We're back in power. We're back in control. We can have some peace again. But no, apparently not, because this thing that you wanted to crush when you crushed Trump, this thing you wanted to wipe out, this phenomenon that you were trying to deliver the death blow to, it did not die with Trump stepping down from office. And indeed, Trump was, if he wasn't even an authentic representative of this zeitgeist, or whether he was that or whether he was just an opportunist, I tend toward the latter perspective. But regardless, this anti-zeitgeist continues. And the current state of things, I think is untenable. It's absolutely untenable. It's absolutely untenable for one group, one faction to diabolicize, to demonize the other, and constantly try to play whack-a-mole whenever this other side asserts itself, whatever it might be. It's called the right, or it's called conservatism, or it's called nationalism, or it's even still called racism and sexism and homophobia, even though you don't have to be white, you don't have to be male, you don't have to be straight to be a part of this anti-zeitgeist. But they still hold on to all of those terms, and they just like they make Zimmerman into a white man, even if they call him a white Hispanic, whatever the hell that is. They talk about multiracial whiteness. That was actually a phrase used. How do we understand the Trump phenomenon? It's multiracial whiteness. How do we get to the bottom of the fact that the leader of the Proud Boys is a non-white guy? Multiracial whiteness. It's absurd. The absurdity is manifest. So the whack-a-mole game has got to stop at some point. This current state of things has got to come to a head at some point, because it is untenable. We've got to find a way to, pardon the term, coexist. But the problem with coexisting right now is that the representatives of the official zeitgeist want the anti-zeitgeist to be exterminated, to be wiped out. They want to deprogram those of us who are not a part of them. They see this as their goal. That's been openly stated that they want. The one PBS representative who was exposed by Project Veritas, he said it, like, we've got to take these kids away from their Trump voting parents and send them to re-education centers, enlightenment camps. That's what he said, and he wasn't just speaking for himself when he said that, hyperbolic as it might seem. Well, that's not tenable. That kind of mentality, that kind of hatred, constantly being employed, constantly being whipped up against those representatives of the anti-zeitgeist. At some point, I don't know what it's going to take, but at some point, barring an all-out civil war, at some point there's got to be a recognition that people have the right to live their lives the way they wish to live them, and they should be left alone to do so. Because, again, we're not talking about a small group of people. We're not talking about, like, 225 people in the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, where the ATF can come in and burn the building to the ground and shoot the people who are running out. There's a lot more people than that, and it's not just people of one faith. It's a multi-layered. The anti-zeitgeist is you'll pardon the expression, a diverse group, as far as being composed of different people with different belief systems and different ways of seeing the world, but all united in their opposition to those who want to essentially wipe them out, who want to essentially see to it that their way of living no longer obtains. So it's got to come to a head one way or another. I think ultimately there will have to be some kind of secession. I know there'll be naysayers, people who say, I know there are always naysayers. Like, oh no, it's not going to happen. It's still going to be this. It's still going to be that. I mean, there's always the black-pilled people. But I'm just telling you, whatever you may think, maybe things are going to be terrible forever in your mind. I'm just saying, regardless of right or wrong or good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying the current state of things is not tenable in the long term. That's all.